We are back on the Majority Report. Sam Seder on the phone. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program Nick Hanauer. He is an entrepreneur, a venture capitalist living in Seattle, Washington. He is the co-founder of the True Patriot Network, and which is based on ideas that came out of the book that he co-authored, The True Patriot. Thanks for joining us, Nick.
You bet.
Let's start with, and of course, you gave a TED Talk a couple of months ago, I guess it was,
Yep.
and it ultimately generated some controversy. Let's start with what you were talking about in the TED Talk. You were specifically addressing this notion of tax breaks for so-called job creators, and specifically the wealthy. Tell us, sum up that talk for us.
So the talk I gave at TED was based on. So my writing partner and I, Eric Liu, have just published another book called The Gardens of Democracy, and the talk I gave at TED is based on essentially some ideas about economics in that book that we call middle-out economics. Largely the idea that the argument that the trickle-down notion of economics is just completely and totally false, and that when you understand economies as they truly are, as ecosystemic rather than mechanistic, you instantly see that jobs are a consequence of essentially a circle of life-like feedback loop between businesses and their customers. And if you don't have any customers, you don't have any businesses. And in that sense, middle-class consumers are the true job creators in a capitalist economy. And if they don't thrive, neither do businesses. And so that's the generalized argument. In a world where the middle class doesn't thrive, neither does business. And the stronger and more robust the middle class is, the more robust the business climate will be. And in that sense, middle class consumers are far more job creators than capitalists like me. And of course, the point of all of this is that giving tax breaks and low tax rates and big exemptions to capitalists and rich people on the theory that they will create jobs makes no sense if they're not job creators, and that it's a much more reasonable and frankly more economically effective approach to give the tax breaks to the middle class and to more appropriately tax the people at the very tippy top, both individually and I should add corporations too.
And so basically it's demand in the context of this ecosystem that starts the process of creating growth and ultimately creating jobs.
Yeah, well, demand is the thing that can animate a virtuous cycle of increasing prosperity, right? Because the more prosperous the middle class becomes, the more stuff they can buy, which forces people like me to hire more people. When I hire more people, then again, there's more people who want to buy my stuff, which forces me again to hire more people. The more people I hire, the more labor becomes rare, the higher wages I have to pay, and now again, people can buy more stuff, and I have to hire more people. This is broadly speaking the story of the post-war period. The median wage was rising, and business was awesome as a consequence of that, right? So it's basically it's a circle of life like feedback loop between customers and businesses that animates prosperity. And
this is something Henry Ford was talking about, right?
Right. And people have talked about it for a long time, but we have somewhat lost sight of it. Part of the reason we've lost sight of it is that the economic models that we have used for the last 30, 40, 50 years are mechanistic in nature, and they don't. They basically don't allow you to see things in terms of these feedback loops. But we know now with scientific certainty that the economy isn't just similar to an ecosystem, it actually is a kind of ecosystem, and as a consequence of that, it's subject to the same kinds of feedback loops. And once you see it as an ecosystem, the craziness of the current sort of economic orthodoxy becomes much clearer. and it becomes much more obvious that a more fruitful path for everybody, middle class, poor, and rich, is to more appropriately tax corporations and rich people so that we have enough money to invest in the middle class. There's another really insidious part of rising inequality that I think is not well understood, and that is that the more unequal. So it's not just the problem of middle income consumers not having enough money, because the amount of money in a society you make isn't relevant. The only thing that's relevant is how much you make in relation to other people. And if you have a class of people for whom price is no object, what that does is it stretches the society apart, because some of us can afford anything. And so all of the things that you need to survive become more expensive, even though you don't have any more money. And so that's what's happened in the middle class, is that wages have been stagnant for 30 years, but in addition, health care, the cost of sending a kid to college, all these costs have exploded and have spiraled out of reach for most Americans.
Because we have a class in this country for which money is simply not an issue.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I can bid up the price of anything. Anything you want to buy, I can outbid you.
Indeed.
Right? And so that puts pricing pressure on everything.
And so let's talk. I want to just talk specifically about that difference between mechanistic and viewing the economy as mechanistic or as an ecosystem.
Yeah.
I have a sense of what you're talking about it as an ecosystem, but tell us what it means to view it as a system that is mechanistic.
So the entire edifice of traditional economics is rooted in some assumptions, many of them born in the 19th century, that the economy is a linear system, it's a closed system, and it's a mechanistic system. So let me give you just one example of that thinking. That is that the entirety of traditional economics rests on the assumption that people, the agents in the system, are perfectly rational, perfectly calculating, and perfectly selfish. That and they have it basically every single person has to be able to make these perfect net present value calculations about everything they do in order to make traditional economics work. And of course, we now know, again, with scientific certainty, that that's not what people are like at all. People aren't rational, they're emotional, they're not calculating, they're approximating, and they're not selfish either. They're mostly reciprocal. And when you understand people in that way, all of these traditional economic models break down. Let me give you an example of why this is not just some academic curiosity. So there's a kind of economic model that the government uses to forecast basically what's going to happen to the economy. It's called a stochastic general equilibrium model. And after the meltdown of 2007-8, they assembled a bunch of people to try and figure out what went wrong. So in this model that models the entire country, guess how many banks were in that model? Well, I won't let you guess. The answer is 0. There were 0 banks in the model because according to the equilibrium theory of economics, the efficient market hypothesis, banks don't matter because they're a perfectly efficient pass-through. Mm-hmm. And of course, the banks are what created the problem. There are 70 million households in the United States. In the model the government used, there was just one household modeled, a perfectly rational, perfectly selfish, and perfectly calculating household. And so this view of how the world works is just completely wrong, and will lead you into some craziness if you're not careful.
And I'd argue, frankly, that that there are even times where rational self-interest, even if we were all rational self-interested players, we would still ultimately have a problem. Just take, for example, the notion of antibiotics. There is no reason for me as an individual not to take antibiotics every time I have an infection, every time it's even vaguely warranted if I can afford it. However, ultimately, what we're going to do if everyone chose that path is to create these super strains of bacteria that are going to be problematic for everyone.
Right.
And so,
right, and there is, and and again, I think what's happened over the last 20 or 30 years, and basically the subject of the book that we just wrote, The Gardens of Democracy, is that there's been a revolution in our understanding of human social systems, not as mechanistic, linear, and closed, but as complex, adaptive, and ecosystemic, and evolutionary, right? And as an ecosystem, the economy, for instance, is subject to the same kinds of forces as the evolutionary forces as natural ecosystems. And the issue that you raise is a very good one, and is a perfect example of the tension that human societies face as social creatures. The tension between competition within a group for what's best for the individual versus competition of the group with other groups. And there will always be a tension between what's good for me individually in the moment and what's good for the group competing with another group over the long term. And we have political orthodoxy in this country coming mostly from the right, which is the idea that the only thing that matters is worrying about what's good for the individual and never what's good for the group. And that's where all this anti-tax stuff comes from. That's where all this anti-regulation stuff comes from. That's where this sort of libertarian craziness comes from.
How do you reconcile the notion that over the past 30, 40 years we have a clearer understanding of our economy and our society functioning as an ecosystem, but at the same time the orthodoxy, the default conventional wisdom has sort of tracked in the other direction?
Because almost no one understands this. So there are tiny outposts in academia that have begun to incorporate this new science into the social sciences. The Institute for New Economic Thinking at Oxford is one of them. But this is the bleeding edge of rethinking how to order society, and it is going to take, I regret to admit, quite a long time for these ideas to sink into people's consciousness, and for certainly the academic world to begin to make the shift. We're at the dawn, frankly, of a new kind of enlightenment, rethinking in almost every way about how human societies work and how we should order them to make things go better. But it's going to be a slog, it's a very important thing to begin to talk about.
Well, let me ask you if you think that part of the reason why that has occurred is at least in some way indicative of what happened with your talk.
Sure.
So you did this talk in I guess it was in April, there's the National Journal released some of an email exchange between you and the curator of TED, which is, I think by now most of my audience is aware of what TED is. It's a series of conferences that has grown exponentially in terms of providing these a forum for these things. And at first your talk was received well, it appears.
Yeah.
Tell us what happened after that.
Well, I mean, the talk I gave was in turn based on an op-ed that I wrote for Bloomberg Business Week on this very subject, and that op-ed went hyper-viral. That the op-ed, at least according to the editors at Bloomberg, was the most read op-ed in their history. So the ideas are very potent and very interesting to people, and so the talk that I gave at TED was based on that, and I got a great reaction at the conference, albeit lots and lots of people don't like to hear this message. It's a very tough message for people like me, who are wealthy and entrepreneurs and who have always thought of themselves as essentially the center of the economic universe, right, as job creators. But the TED people loved it, and or at least told me they loved it, and they were going to release it. And then, as things unfolded, they decided in the end that it was what they consider to be too political and too controversial. I understand that. It threatens an orthodoxy that a huge number of people have a huge stake in. And when Copernicus came along and made the observation that the Earth was not the center of the solar system, it was the sun, he was not welcomed with open arms by the rich and powerful people in that society, because they had a huge stake in the old orthodoxy, right? They had a stake in people believing that the Earth was the center of the solar system. And there's a huge number of powerful people in this country, rich and powerful people who very much want to believe that rich business people are the center of the economic universe, that we are job creators. Because if you believe that, then we, people like me, deserve status and privileges. Privileges like the 233% difference in the tax rate and what capitalists pay on capital gains, dividends, and carried interest at 15%, and the 35% top marginal rate that ordinary Americans pay for work. Right? You can't justify that giant difference in tax rates unless you deify capitalists like me.
And in fact, you started off your talk by saying this is an article of faith for Republicans and one that is seldom challenged by Democrats.
Yeah, most Democrats also accept this orthodoxy.
Indeed.
Even President Obama accepts this orthodoxy, in my opinion. I mean, I've never talked to him directly about it, but the best argument that President Obama can make against economic rising inequality is an argument of fairness, right? That it's unfair, or as my 9-year-old daughter loves to say, it's mean. Inequality is mean, and indeed inequality is mean, but that's not the best argument against it. The best argument against rising inequality is a death spiral of falling demand. It's terrible for business.
And we've seen, in fact, it was a Democrat who dropped the capital gains rate down to its levels here. So this,
so we have all bought into this economic orthodoxy. Us Democrats feel proud when we say, well, no, it's small businesses that create the jobs. Well, small businesses don't create jobs either. It's their customers that create jobs. The economy creates jobs. A business person claiming to create jobs is like a squirrel claiming to have created evolution, or a lion claiming to have created zebras. It's the other way around, right? The economy creates jobs. Evolution created squirrels.
And I mentioned that because one of the in responding to the release of this story, the curator of TED accused your piece as being too partisan, and in fact, the words partisan and Republican come up more in his explanation of why it was at first not posted. Ultimately, it was posted because essentially of the blowback. But
I would just like to say, I mean, I think look. So here's the thing: it's worth saying that. It's Chris Anderson's conference, and he's an incredibly bright and thoughtful guy. And I happen to know that he cares as much about inequality as I do. So he's been treated pretty unfairly. I think he made an error in judgment in not posting my talk, but I do know that he does care about these issues. And
all right. Well, I raise this not to demonize Chris Anderson, and I think what's actually far more important is that there are mechanisms that prevent someone like Chris Anderson, regardless of what his perspective is on it, and it exemplifies it even more if he agrees with the substance of what you're talking about. And its popularity, I think, is very hard to argue at this point. And I think what it speaks to is the other forces that are maintaining this as conventional wisdom. Because if we see it at TED, which is arguably on the margins of distribution mechanisms that should be restricted, and I'm talking as opposed to the corporate media or corporate newspapers, then it just gives us a window into that process of how these ideas are actually subjugated.
Yeah, and for sure, it is a controversial message, right? It's not for a rich business guy like me. It's not a great way to win friends, right? Not super popular.
Well, of course, the irony is that there's plenty of documentation. There's been plenty of books written just in the past 6 months, I think, frankly,
Yes.
that would make the argue that at the end of the day, the future of those wealthy people and of the corporations is reliant upon this new perspective.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's my fundamental point. Is that I'm not arguing that I want my taxes raised because I'm like some sweetheart do-gooder. I'm just convinced that it's the surest way to provide a great opportunity, but both for other people, but in particular for people like me in the future. The more the middle class thrives, the better business will be for everybody. And the single shrewdest thing I think we can do as a society is to tax rich people like me and profitable corporations more, so that we can afford to invest back in the middle class. And when we do, it will be better for them, it will be better for the poor, and it will be better for the rich. I just think it's a smart way to organize ourselves.
And another irony is that the week that this becomes a story, and we're pre-recording this now, but just this week, at the same time that your talk is being considered controversial, we have Nancy Pelosi coming out and essentially pre-bargaining away and going further than even President Obama. President Obama wants to allow the Bush tax cuts for people making over $250,000 to expire. She comes out today and says $1 million should be the cutoff. And we know that half of the benefits that actually go to the tax cuts that remain will actually accrue to millionaires, because their money from $250,000 to $1 million remains untaxed. And because, of course, we have marginal tax rates. So how do we, and you know, from the perspective of myself, who has a completely member-supported program, and from the perspective of people who listen to this program, whether it's on radio or on via podcast or whatever it is, when we see a millionaire have trouble at least breaking through in a venue as, in many respects, as supposedly as less constrained as TED. How do we get this message out there? How do we permeate the broader mainstream narrative?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not a media expert. I wish I had a good answer to that. I do think that this idea, the central idea that, you know, that I sort of point to in the talk and the subject of our book is a very powerful mean. That if you can get ordinary Americans to stop believing that rich business people are job creators and start believing that they are the job creators, I think you've changed the political and economic landscape. I think that, you know, getting people to start to reject this orthodoxy that if you pour money into rich people in the form of tax breaks like an ingredient, jobs and prosperity will squirt out of them like donuts. If there was a shred of truth to the idea that the lower the tax rates on the rich or businesses got, or the more wealth the wealthy got, the more jobs we'd create, today we would be drowning in jobs, given how rich people like me have gotten. I mean, it just cannot be true. And that's because businesses don't hire more people when they have an abundance of profit. They hire more people when they have an abundance of customers. And that's what we've got to get back to.
Nick Hanauer, author with Eric Liu of the Gardens of Democracy, and the website truepatriot.org. Is that correct?
Yeah, or godemocracy.org.
Godemocracy.org. Mm-hmm. Nick, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to do it. Thank you.